of safety of 2. And personal fall arrest systems, when stopping a fall, shall have a limit maximum arresting force on an employee of 1,800 pounds when used with a body harness. So 1,800 times 2, a factor of safety, the minimum factor of safety, is actually an anchorage design criteria of 3,600 pounds, which is what is used on aerial work platform anchorage points provided by the manufacturer. These are some of the typical examples of AWP anchorages that you'll find on aerial work platforms. There's no criteria to the specific location within the platform that they're located, so they can be anywhere from the toe board to the top guardrail. However, where you attach them, look for the labels to identify the anchorage points, because those anchorage points are designed to specifically carry the load intended. You are not to be able to use the guardrail system unless the aerial work platform manufacturer identifies it specifically as an attachment point and provides instructions for its use. Always follow the aerial work platform manufacturer's instructions. When it comes to the fall protection system itself, we go back to what you have heard in the letters of interpretation and the rescinding letter, verifying what OSHA looks for, which is the system must be rigged such that the employee can neither fall more than 6 feet. So having a 12-foot lanyard is an example of something that would be non-compliant, nor contact the lower surface. So regardless of what length fall arrest system you have, they can't hit a lower surface. Further, in the fall protection standard, employers shall provide and install all fall protection systems required by the subpart for an employee and shall comply with all pertinent requirements of this subpart before the employee begins the work that necessitates fall protection. So now that you know all of this, the question is, what personal fall protection system are you going to use to meet these needs? Well, there are 2 options of systems that can be used: fall restraint and fall arrest. A fall protection system is designed to arrest or prevent falls, which is restraint, from a height. A fall restraint system consists of the equipment used to keep an employee from reaching a falling point, such as the edge of a roof or an elevated work surface. The most commonly used fall restraint system is the standard guardrail. Said very specifically, a restraint system will not allow an occupant to leave the platform. So if you're going to be using a fall restraint system, there will be no fall. The individual, the person will always be within the confines of the work platform. According to the definition of federal OSHA standards, a personal fall arrest systems means a system used to arrest an employee from a fall to a working level. An arrest system is intended to stop free fall from the platform and consequently require a rescue plan. In the document of best practices that was referenced from the multiple trade associations, they provided 4 basic options to be used as potential choices for personal fall protection systems. The first one is a fall arrest system, and it's simply a short lanyard. So you would take a lanyard that would be attached to a belt or a harness that would prevent you from being able to fall outside the work platform. So it needs to be short in length. It would be restrictive of movement so as not to allow the individual to be thrown from the platform. The anchorage point and height of the occupant must be considered in defining what length short lanyard you'd be using. Would it be a 2 foot, 2.5 foot, 3 foot, etc.? So depending upon where the anchorage is located on the platform and the height of the occupant who is using it, you would then come up with a lanyard that would be used for fall restraint. A second choice is a fall restraint with an arrest using a lanyard with an adjuster. So in this particular case, this will allow for a fall restraint system or potentially fall arrest based on the length that the lanyard is exposed. To use it as a fall arrest system, you must require a deceleration device, or commonly known as a shock absorber, the black item on the very top. So anytime that you are going to be using a fall arrest system, a shock absorber should be used. The deceleration device, the shock absorber, is always in place, even when you're using it as a restraint system. So in this particular case, when you're using it as restraint, you would adjust the lanyard to the shortest possible length to keep you restrained in the platform. But when you're in a position where you are operating in a position where you will not have a fall greater than 6 feet and ensure that you're not going to hit a lower surface, you can adjust the lanyard out to a longer length so that you can use it as an arrest system, understanding that when you move the platform, you should put it back into the restraint mode. The third option that is proposed is what is known as a double-legged lanyard. So in the double-legged lanyard, as you can see, a restraint short lanyard and an arrest long lanyard with a shock absorber will be employed. The short lanyard is used for fall restraint during travel. So when you're in travel mode and you're not worrying about work positioning in the platform, you want to be in restraint, and that is one of the times that most you are exposed to an ejection when you're driving over an unlevel surface and there's movement on the platform. So when you're in travel mode, restraint should be used. The long lanyard is used only for fall arrest. And again, you must go back to what the OSHA requirements stipulate, which is you must use it at a place where you can't fall more than 6 feet. So the length of that lanyard must take that into account based on the anchorage point and the height of the individual. In addition to that, arrest must be assured so that you will not hit a lower surface. So you should never use the arrest system when you're in a position of not knowing whether you can have clearance below you and worry about the issue of hitting a lower surface. Always keep in mind that when using a fall arrest system, the requirements for a fall arrest system must be met. And the fourth and final option that is suggested in the best practice document is a self-retracting lifeline, often known as an SRL. Here you must ensure compliance with the manufacturer to ensure that it can be used for aerial work platforms. There are a wide range of products in the marketplace, and some of them are not meant for lateral movement, only overhead connection to an anchorage. So you must make sure that the self-retracting lifeline that you choose from the manufacturer of the SRL approves it for use with aerial work platform equipment. You must use the restraint mode while moving or in travel mode. Well, how do you do that? It's a self-retracting lifeline. You must make sure that when you're in position, if you have an occupant, that the anchorage point doesn't allow enough of the webbing out to allow a free fall to occur. And again, as always, a fall rest system requirements must always be met so that you can't have an SRL that has longer lengths of lanyard out to allow a fall of more than 6 feet or to come in contact with a lower surface. So you have your anchorage, you have the requirements on where you are to use fall protection, and now you have some choices on what are the devices or systems that we can use to appropriately work in an aerial work platform. How do I do it safely? Well, again, we go back to the basic premises, which is to ensure that personnel fall arrest systems will, again, limit the maximum arresting force to 1,800 pounds, be rigged such that an employee can neither fall more than 6 feet nor contact a lower surface, bring an employee to a complete stop, and limit maximum deceleration distance to 3.5 feet, and that's the choice of the type of system that you're using, and have a sufficient strength to withstand twice the potential impact energy of a worker free falling a distance of 6 feet, which is allowed by the system. You must always remove systems and components from service immediately after they have been subjected to a fall impact, or until inspected by a competent person and deemed undamaged and suitable for use. You must always promptly rescue employees in the event of a fall or assure that they are capable of rescue themselves. So anytime you have an arrest system, the assumption is you will have a fall. If you have a arrest system being used, prompt rescue is a requirement of using that system, and you must ensure that you have in place a program system to ensure prompt rescue can take place. The inspection of the systems must occur before each use for wear, damage, and other deterioration, and remove defective components from service. So in order to inspect the systems before each use, you then would lean back to appropriate training, which we'll talk about in a second. And do not attach the fall arrest system to the guardrail systems. As we stipulated earlier in the review of the anchorage points, the guardrail systems that look pretty appealing to many people look like a location that you would be able to attach your fall protection system to. And in fact, they're not designed for that loading and would be highly inappropriate to be used as an anchorage for a fall protection system. So there are many older aerial work platforms in the marketplace, especially scissor-type aerials that do not have a manufacturer, an aerial work platform manufacturer anchorage on there, and you will be ill-advised to use anything but the aerial work manufacturer's recommended anchorage points at any time. And many of them have a retrofit kit for older machines if they're needed, but you should never attach the fall arrest systems to the guardrail system. While training is required for aerial work platform use, training for personal fall or for fall protection is a topic all of its own. In subpart M, which is the OSHA training standard 1926-503A, the employer shall provide a training program to each employee who might be exposed to a fall hazard. Program shall enable each employee to recognize the hazards of falling and shall train each employee in the procedures to be followed in order to minimize the hazard. So, if we go back to the beginning, you are required to have fall protection when you're on a boom type lift. You're required to use personal fall protection. So as a byproduct, that would mean that you're exposed to a fall hazard as defined in the standard, and then require training for anyone who's using the equipment. Further, it states that the employer shall ensure that each employee has been trained as necessary by a competent person qualified in the following areas. So they need to be trained on the nature of fall hazards in the work area. So what are the hazards that we need to be aware of? What are the ways that we need to prevent these hazards from being a risk? The correct procedures for inspecting the fall protection equipment being used, as stated earlier, they must be inspected daily before use. And the use and operation of the devices. So how do I properly make the connections? What can I properly connect them to? How do I properly adjust the full body harness to make sure that it's fitted onto me properly? All of those elements of the safe use of those products must be part of the training program. And last but not least, it's the rescue plan. If we have a fall, and when we have a fall arrest system being used, the assumption must be taken that we will have a fall. We also need to train in the safe use operation of how to do a rescue. Fall rescue. OSHA requires that the employer provide for prompt rescue of employees in the event of a fall, or shall ensure that employees are able to rescue themselves. It's been an ongoing question, what does prompt rescue mean? And OSHA does have a letter of interpretation on that topic, and it really is predicated on the environment, location, and other aspects. However, in the most finite definitions, prompt rescue, as it is not defined in the standard, the word prompt requires that rescues be performed quickly, or in other words, in time to prevent serious injury to the worker, such as suspension trauma. And suspension trauma has been shown to take place in less than 15 minutes. So depending upon the type of personal fall protection system you're using and how things are working, you need to make sure that in the process of training and showing the people how to use the system, rescue is an important aspect. As an organization that is entrenched in the safe use of powered access equipment, we believe that aerial work platforms are one of the safest means to put people in the air. We have a platform that is fully guardrailed that individuals be working from. So the fact that we're even talking about personal fall protection, the use of a lanyard, a harness, and anchorage points at some level seems to be over and above what would be needed, but as described in the standard for only being required for boom type lifts, you can be ejected out from those. But we have many falls that are occurring from aerial work platforms. So how can someone fall from an aerial work platform? Sometimes good people do dumb things. Now, here's one of those pictures that you look at, and you can even think that it's contrived. How can someone be doing this? And We had a contractor talking, doing a presentation several weeks ago, and made reference to the fact that our strengths are sometimes our weakness. The strength of the construction industry is, with all the dynamics that are facing them, somehow they find a way of getting things done. And sometimes the way that they get things done aren't always the safest ways, as this picture will exemplify. But then you look at this picture and say, well, what does that have to do with aerial work platforms? Well, this shows you the ingenuity that also takes place outside of the ground level from the work platform. There are other potential risks. And why do we have falls? Sometimes it's machine modifications. Here's an example of people using their ingenuity to find ways to access their work area by modifying a work platform. This modification is not approved by the manufacturer. As you can see, we end up having individuals who are outside the confines of their guardrailed work platform. Even if they are attached somewhere, are they attached properly to an anchorage point? You have 3 personnel on this platform. I can tell you that this platform is rated for 2 people, so you end up having an overload with them. Who knows what the load capacity of that particular device that they put on the outside is. So here is an example of why we can have falls that go beyond the confines of having the appropriate fall protection devices. We have a requirement. Wear personal fall protection when you're on a boom type lift. Here's a clear example of no personal fall protection being used. Here you have a boom lift that's out over the road. Can you imagine what would happen if a vehicle comes down the road, hits that boom? There you will see an ejection. You'll see that these individuals will be thrown clear from that platform. So not wearing personal fall protection and other potential violations of safe use are also issues that need to be examined. Having your feet firmly on the platform. Well, here's a picture that unfortunately is too common to see, which is individuals exiting the platform and to try to access their work rather than repositioning the platform. So that platform moves. It telescopes in, telescopes out, rotates left, rotates right, basket rotates. So we have people who are putting themselves at risk. And sometimes the belief is, well, this is a big, heavy machine, and if I fall, I'm not going to get hurt. There are lots of considerations that need to take in place, and being outside the platform is putting yourself and others at risk. Here's another clear example of not having the right equipment for the job, obviously putting yourself at risk by not having your feet planted firmly on the platform floor. Other times these lifts tip over because we don't have adequate ground support. Here you're seeing an example of someone putting some type of cribbing underneath a lumber roadway they're building to get their lift from one place to another. So again, we can have a tip over and a fall that results from a tip over, and personal fall protection equipment will not solve that problem. We also have wind and weather conditions. So here you can see that the weather doesn't look good in the environment that you have here, and unfortunately too often we find that lifts are up. They have a limited capacity for stability with wind loads. Knowing what those wind loads are and ensuring that you are not operating the aerial work platform when those wind loads are exceeding the manufacturer's requirement will also improve the stability and safety of the individuals. Unlevel grade, again, while machines can be termed rough terrain, oscillating axles, etc., The machines are generally meant to be driven on hard level surfaces, and taking them in grades that are beyond the manufacturer's requirements put you at risk, and here we have a fall again. Traffic and other moving vehicles. Here you end up having aerial lifts that are in the vicinity of one another and can actually run into one another and cause an ejection. And here's a picture, unfortunately, of an accident that occurred when a boom lift was out over the roadway and hit by oncoming traffic. So ensuring that you make all provisions to protect the aerial work platform from being in contact with other devices and vehicles is important for the stability of the machine and the safety of the occupants of the aerial work platform. So these are examples of how we can prevent falls. And while we talk about personal fall protection systems, it's important to make sure that we also safeguard against improper use that results in individuals being ejected or falling from an aerial work platform. So for fall prevention, being safe is being aware of your job site hazards and good safe work practices and common sense ways to avoid them. Make safety a habit. It's not a one-time event. Be aware, ensure training takes place, and reinforce that training. Fall protection in safe use. Guardrails are the primary fall protection for all aerial work platforms. Personal fall protection equipment is required on boom-type lifts to protect against the forces of ejection. Safe use guidelines must be followed by trained and familiarized operators. So again, we must have trained and familiarized operators in the work platform to ensure safety is taking place. Aerial work platforms must be inspected daily and maintained to specifications by the manufacturer. If we have a trained operator but is on a piece of equipment that has not been properly maintained and inspected, you may have a hazard that could result in a tip-over fall hazard. And employers must monitor and supervise to ensure the compliance of all the regulations and standards. Your work site is required to have daily inspections. You must always look for drop-offs and holes, bumps, floor obstructions or debris, inadequate surface support, wind conditions, vehicle and equipment traffic, and other possible unsafe conditions. The work site can change hour by hour, day by day, week by week, so you must constantly be doing workplace inspections to ensure that the area that the aerial work platforms are operating in are safe to prevent tip-overs, to prevent hits and obstructions, and the potential for ejection. All of these are important elements of fall protection. Safe use guidelines. You must always use the right equipment for the application. As seen in some of the earlier pictures, having an aerial work platform that won't reach the work site that the work is taking place will result in the worker climbing on the guardrails or doing something that shouldn't take place. That will result in a hazard, or at least the risk of a hazard. Do not sit, stand, or climb on the guardrails, all for obvious reasons. Only use the machine as it was intended. Do not modify the machines. Drive the aerial work platform with the platform lowered. So as the aerial lift is elevated, you'll find that it becomes less stable although many of them are capable of being driven in the elevated position. The stability increases as it's lowered, and when you're moving from location to location on the job site, safe work practices demand that you drive the elevated work platform in the lowered position. And don't leave the platform of an elevated work platform. If that is allowed, it can only be allowed by standards under the written guidance of the aerial work platform manufacturer with a defined process to safely allow you to exit the platform when elevated. And don't reach or overextend beyond the guardrails. So again, we go back to the fact that we have a best practice that's in place. The standards for safe use of personal fall protection equipment are in there. A summary of all the things and even some more details are in that statement of best practices. And there are other best practices available for you to examine. That same group has created a statement of best practices for general training and familiarization of aerial work platforms. So you should ensure that anyone who is authorized to operate an aerial work platform is both trained and familiarized, and this document provides you that guidance. And there's also another best practice that's out there, which is the avoidance of traffic and crushing injuries to people in an aerial work platform. And all of these are available free of download at www.awpt.org or at any other of the industry websites that were listed, ARA, AEM, AED, and SAIA. So that completes the presentation, and if there are any questions, I would be glad to answer those. Katie?
Sorry about that. I was signed in as a different person and kept clicking my own name. But I will. I was going to leave Tony's email address up there, but if he has any questions, if you have any questions, shoot me a question in the tab, and I will be happy to ask him for his email address, or I can post it up here again. But we do have some really good questions from the audience. So first of all, Tony, could you please define what an aerial work platform is? Does that include scissor lifts? And what about baskets attached to forklifts?
Aerial work platforms, as in this presentation, are all products that elevate an individual with a self-propelled or truck-mounted vehicle over the road. So by definition, it would be boom lifts, scissor lifts, manually propelled truck-mounted aerial work platforms. All are inclusive of the standards that we've been talking about today.
Okay. I think there's some terminology questions as well on, I know in the past you have talked about maybe switching to the term ejection protection. One of the questions we have is maybe would it be better if we referred to fall restraint and fall arrest as work restraint and fall arrest, or maybe a different combination of terms? What do you think about that? Because fall is kind of giving people a misconception about that.
Well, unfortunately, the definitions aren't ours to manipulate. They are actually from the OSHA standards, and I would tell you that changing the OSHA standards, when we say it takes an act of Congress, literally it takes an act of Congress. So to change that terminology, which is the regulations themselves, would be difficult for us to make a modification to. And while I do agree with the sentiment of the question, I would say that it's difficult for us to get away from terminology that are written in regulations and standards.
Okay. The 6-foot shock absorbing lanyard, I'm not sure if you talked about that. Is that still okay to use?
Well, the question is not whether it is safe to use. The question is can you put it in a position where it can be safely used? The answer from OSHA in the requirements is that A, you must use personal fall protection and a boom type lift, or when you use it in a boom type lift or a scissor lift, if that is deemed required, you must follow the basic instructions, which are A, not allow the individual to fall more than 6 feet, and B, not allow them to hit a lower surface. So the question is it okay to use or is it not okay to use? And the answer would be it is predicated on you being able to comply with those elements of the standard itself. So can it be? The answer is the only time you're going to see a citation from OSHA is if you A, don't have it on, or B, if you hit a lower surface with using that system. So can it be used? It is my assumption today that it can be used, but you have a higher risk of hitting a lower surface in many applications with that system as opposed to other choices that were provided in the description.
Great. Okay. How would you adjust the lanyard when it's connected to your back?
Well, they're set so that you can have the adjustment closer to the anchorage point. So it is something that can be done.
Okay. When we're talking about the letters of interpretation, where can those be found? What's the source of those letters?
The source of the letters are OSHA. So OSHA, as I tried to explain, answers questions that come in about the standards and tries to provide some clarity and guidance. And as a byproduct of that, any letter of interpretation that is written can be found on the OSHA website, which is www.osha.gov. And if you go in there and they have a search engine, you put in their letter of interpretation, you'll find it. And in fact, if you just go to Google and put down OSHA letter of interpretation, that'll take you to the website where you can find those. And there's a voluminous number of them on all different subjects. So they have them listed by year. So if you have a specific topic, you can do a search in OSHA's engine search for a specific topic, but sometimes they're difficult to find the ones that you're looking for, unfortunately.
Okay. Lots of letters out there. Should a harness be worn when the lift is at ground level, when moving to another location, or when it's elevated, or both?
The answer is both. If you're in a boom type lift, you must always have fall protection on. You'll find that the majority of people in the industry will always recommend that you're using a full body harness. There are very few times that wearing a safety belt, although there are some applications where a safety belt may legally be used, it is not deemed to be the best product in the market anymore, and it rarely is used. But anytime that you're in a boom type lift, you must have a harness on and a full protection system to connect to the aerial work platform regardless of the elevation that you're in.
Tony, can you clarify what the 5,000-pound and 3,600-pound fall arrest requirements apply to? Is one the anchor point and the other the fall arrest lanyard and harness?
They both refer to the anchorage. Really what happens is sometimes people read a 5,000-pound anchorage as the exclusive design criteria. And the 5,000-pound really is an OSHA requirement when an individual is trying to use something on a job site as an anchorage. So if they want to tie across the beam or across a girder or any other type of device, and they want to anchor off to that, that device must be capable of holding 5,000 pounds. It's not designed as an anchorage. However, a designed anchorage, such as the anchors that the aerial work platform manufacturers provide, are allowed to be designed to a different standard, which is a design standard of 2-to-1 towards the maximum load, with a maximum load requirement of 1,800 pound stress that the fall protection system would be able to take. 2 times that is 3,600 pounds. So that is a design anchorage point versus just using any other type of anchor that you may find on a site.
Okay. Are there any diagrams anywhere that you can think of that show fall arrest and fall restraint limits?
Well, I'm not sure what diagrams would what you'd be looking to see. I guess to answer that the way I think that you're asking the question is fall restraint has 0 fall, so there's no diagram that you need to show that. A fall restraint system will not allow you to fall from the platform. So there is no diagrams. There are the only diagrams that are available, and there is one in that best practice document that you can see on site, shows the maximum allowable fall distance, which is really from the manufacturers of the fall protection devices, which is the issue that was prompted by the letter of interpretation, the 18.5 feet. And really what it shows from the anchorage point, you have an anchor, you have a 6-foot lanyard, so there's 6 foot. Then it shows the body, and they put in 5 foot for the body. Then they'll show the shock absorber, and they'll have 3.5 feet for that ripping apart. And then they'll give you another 2 foot of safety, so that will give you an allowable safe falling distance. But there are no other diagrams available because, again, anything else would be predicated on what is the size of the lanyard, what is the height of the individual, what is the shock absorber being used, and all those would go into that allowable fall distance. But even that said, on the, and one of the reasons why there's been some movement on OSHA on rescinding that letter, there are many times that a 6-foot lanyard with a shock absorber have unfortunately been deployed in a fall, and the individual didn't fall the 18.5 feet. So the fact that that is a clearance distance that the manufacturer recommend, it isn't necessarily the full distance that it would take from that anchorage point to a fall. So that diagram that you'll see in that best practice document that again you could find at www.awpt.org under publications. Look under best practices. You can download the best practice document for fall protection. You'll see a diagram in there that shows what I just spoke about.
Great. Okay, a couple more, and then we'll tie it up. Man baskets attached to forklifts. Are forklifts covered by this regulation, by aerial work platforms, when they use a man basket, or is it best practice to apply these methods? I'm sorry, where are what is the regulation for forklifts using man baskets?
Well, that's a real good question. There are design criteria for the manufacturer of them because we see them out in the workplace. There are general safe use practices, and depending upon who you speak to, you'll find associations like ours, IPATH, who are opposed to their use for many reasons, which is the individuals on the platform do not have any level of control over the operation of the device itself. So someone else is driving it, and unfortunately accidents can be seen on an ongoing basis in their use. But there are many manufacturers of aerial and forklift devices who allow them. The answer would be is that when you're using those devices, you should be following these. You have a potential fall. The standards that we're referring to are the OSHA fall standards, so fall protection standards, the subpart M. And anytime that you have a potential fall, and so you would have a potential fall, you should be in a position where you, again, do not allow them to fall more than 6 feet and don't allow them to hit a lower surface. So my recommendation would be is to comply with the standards as you would for an aerial work platform, which is what you are intending that platform to be used as.
Okay, one or two more. Can we use a very short lanyard that does not have a shock absorber, such as a 24-inch lanyard attached to the side attachment point of a harness? This would be used for moving of equipment at low height only.
The answer is yes. You may use a short lanyard without a shock absorber. In fact, most times when you use that would be a restraint device, and a restraint device by definition would be zero fall. If you have zero fall, a shock absorber would not be needed. And as a default, the answer would be to the level that short lanyard is allowing you to be in restraint, a shock absorber is not required.
Okay. Last question. We'll wrap it up here. And we did record this session. I will speak with Tony about supplying some sort of text to go with it if that's okay. And I'll email everyone with the link to the recorded presentation once we're ready to go with it. The final question is, can I be outside the basket yet attached to the basket to prevent a fall?
Rarely, and the only case that you can do that legally is if the aerial lift manufacturer has a device created for that, which there are very few in the marketplace, and they have an outside anchorage point to be used as a fall restraint anchor. Outside of that, if you're looking to go outside of the basket itself, the OSHA and ANSI standards require that the only time that you're allowed to exit an elevated work platform is with the written permission of the aerial work platform manufacturer and follow their guided requirements for doing so. And that also is a rarity, and you'll find that in order to do that, they'll make sure that you are in connection with some type of an anchorage continuously. But it again is not something that you'll find as a recommended process.
Okay, great. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in today. We'll hold our next presentation December 1st at 2 p.m. It will be on aerial lift rescue and retrieval, the process that needs to go through with that in order to retrieve somebody safely from a basket if they're injured or if there is a problem. If you have any questions, you can reach me at kparish@maxcapmedia.com, or if you have a question for Tony, his email is tony.groat@awpt.org. I have sent you an email with that. I'm sorry, I sent you in the question box his contact information as well. If you have any additional questions, please let us know. Thank you all for listening in. We'll see you on December 1st. Thanks.
Thank you all.